One evening I assumed was ordinary turned out to be far from it. We had an argument earlier in the week, but we resolved it. Or so I thought. Then, unexpectedly, Jessica, who usually dislikes going out without me, mentioned she was attending a party, a gathering I'd expressly forbidden her from attending. Now, I'm not a controlling person. We always communicated about such matters. If something bothered either of us, we discussed it. But this time was different. In our kitchen, she casually stood there, seemingly indifferent to my presence as she stated her intention. "I'm going, regardless of your feelings," she said, already holding her car keys. Her statement was more of a declaration than a query or plea. It didn't sound like a question, and it certainly wasn't a request. Doubt stirred within for the first time. I tried reassuring myself it was just overthinking. Perhaps she simply needed space. However, upon seeing her outfit, a tight black mini dress paired with high heels rarely seen, before I realized it wasn't about catching up with Stacy and her friends. This was different. She gave me a cold, distant smile that didn't reach her eyes, didn't even say goodbye, just "don't wait up." I spent the night restlessly pacing my home, feeling a persistent, ominous unease. Something was bothering me deeply, but I neither called nor texted her. If she chose to act this way, I wouldn't be the one chasing after her. I'll give her the night and spend mine in quiet contemplation. Around midnight, I began to review every conversation we've had recently, mentally revisiting small, seemingly trivial instances. Has she been acting somewhat distant? Perhaps. Less affectionate? Maybe. What really troubled me was that whenever I asked about her whereabouts, the responses felt overly polished, overly rehearsed. She always provided explanations. But now, as I reflected on it, something didn't quite fit together. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until the house's silence became oppressive. I picked up my phone and stared at her contact, my thumb poised above it. The clock read 1:30 m. No messages, no updates, just silence. That's when I did something I swore I'd never do. I accessed our shared phone plan. I knew I was crossing a boundary, invading her privacy, but I couldn't help myself. A few clicks, and there it was, clear as crystal. For several weeks now, I've been receiving numerous calls and messages to an unknown number. Their frequency has grown day by day, even beyond work hours and late into the night, while I thought Jessica was asleep beside me. I felt nauseous, my heart racing so fast it was difficult to focus. Despite trying to reassure myself that it might be a work issue or a friend, deep down I knew better, that gut feeling you can't ignore. So there I sat in the darkness, confronted by evidence I hadn't sought out. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I waited, unsure of what I was expecting to happen when dawn broke. Still, no message from Jessica, not even an explanation for staying out late or a lost sense of time. I checked my phone repeatedly, hoping for some sign, but none came. At any moment, something to alleviate the discomfort gnawing in my stomach. Yet, nothing presented itself. Then, at 7:30 in the morning, I was awakened by the sound of heels clicking against the front porch. I hadn't even realized I'd dozed off on the couch until that noise jolted me awake. The door squeaked open, and there she was, Jessica, with a bit of messy hair, smeared makeup, reeking of a blend of alcohol and perfume. She stood casually in the doorway, as if nothing was amiss, ready to disrupt our entire existence. With a lackadaisical grin, she greeted me, "Good morning," as if she hadn't spent the entire night away without so much as a word. No remorse was evident on her face. She glided past me, treating my presence as insignificant, as if her actions held no consequence. I sat up and fixed my gaze upon her. My voice, harsher than intended, escaped my lips, but I no longer cared. "Where in the world have you been?" Her response was a laugh. She turned to face me slowly, meeting my eyes, but instead of defensive explanations or an insincere apology, she found humor in my question. She chuckled. "Is this what we're reduced to? This feels premature for your theatrics." The term drama she opted for. Surprising, to say the least. I made an effort to suppress my simmering wrath as I rose from my seat. "I spent the entire night on vigil, expecting a message or call from you. None came. And here you stand, as if everything is fine and dandy. Don't pretend that I'm the one being irrational." She let out an exasperated sigh. "As I had informed you earlier, I was going to a party. I didn't think it necessary to keep you apprised every minute. We're not adolescents, after all. However, there's something else that bothered me. It wasn't merely the party or staying out late. It was the disrespect evident in her tone. The way she looked at me as if I were an inconvenience. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from raw annoyance. Who is he? Those words spilled forth unexpectedly, harsh and icy. I hadn't intended to voice them, but once they left my lips, I couldn't unsay them. She momentarily paused. The halt was barely perceptible, yet I noticed it. She hesitated slightly before turning away, dismissing me with a wave. "Oh heavens, you truly are suspicious. There isn't anyone else. Stop lying to me, Jessica." I checked the phone bill. The ensuing silence echoed loudly. I didn't want to say it, but it was there, palpable between us. Her countenance altered abruptly. Her smirk vanished, replaced by something colder, more piercing. She glared at me as if I were the one who had overstepped a boundary. "You checked the phone bill?" Her voice was frosty. "What on earth is your problem?" It was almost commendable the way she flipped the situation onto me, as if I were the wrongdoer for inquiring about her whereabouts throughout the night. But I wouldn't let her dictate the story this time. "Who is it?" I asked again, louder, barely keeping my voice steady. She folded her arms, continuing to avoid eye contact. "It's no one. You're being foolish." However, her tone had changed now, less certain, more strategic. She was feeling things out, checking if she could once again use words to evade this situation as usual. I moved nearer. "For almost a month, you've been messaging and phoning someone almost daily at late hours, and now you're gone all night, dressed in that manner. And you expect me to simply accept it's insignificant." For the first time, she appeared flustered. Her jaw tightened, and eventually she turned to confront me. "It's not your concern," she spat out through clenched teeth. "You don't control me." And there it was, her final admission hidden beneath a pile of evasion. She no longer denied it. She didn't try to justify herself. Instead, she made it plain that she didn't care about my thoughts, that my feelings were not her business. I stood there, frozen, gazing at the woman I believed I knew. There was no yelling, no heated argument, no tears, just this chilly, silent understanding that the person before me had transformed. Or perhaps she'd always been like this, and I was merely now becoming aware of it. She spun around and strode towards her bedroom, announcing she would sleep. As if that ended our discussion. As if everything was now all right. But it wasn't. Nothing was okay. Without another word, she vanished into the bedroom, and the door clicked shut, reverberating in my ears, leaving a void in the room as if the air had been evacuated. I remained still, attempting to comprehend what had transpired. It wasn't the quietness that pained me. It was her callousness. She hadn't made an effort to justify herself, didn't care enough to hide her actions or lessen the impact. She simply left, as if I didn't matter. As if we didn't matter. I slumped back onto the couch, my thoughts whirling. At least a month, she'd been communicating with someone else. During the night, while I slept nearby, she was messaging another man, and she remained unaffected when I confronted her. She merely looked past me. What was I supposed to do with that? My mind raced, each recollection of the past few weeks unfolding in my head. Her late nights out, claiming they were with Stacy. The sudden gym routine. The spontaneous office dinners she never attended before. I had overlooked or chosen to ignore these signs. My phone buzzed in my pocket. For a brief instant, I thought it might be her texting a flimsy excuse or apology, but it was just a notification from our phone plan app. My heart sank. I hadn't deactivated the alert for that number, the one she'd been dialing. A fresh message had arrived. The number at 7:48 a.m. She hadn't been in the house for even 20 minutes, and she was already conversing with him. I don't know what compelled me to act, but I clicked on the number. I needed to discover his identity. A stranger's call log unfolded before me, a number unknown to my sight. Agitation coursed through my veins as I perused the call history, realizing over 2 weeks of clandestine communication, numerous calls late at night when she claimed exhaustion. The truth was undeniable now. It wasn't mere suspicion anymore. Jessica had been unfaithful, and her tryst was with Mark. A subtle sound from the bedroom echoed, the door creaking open slightly as she appeared, her face serene, betraying no signs of guilt. "Are you still harping on this?" she asked indifferently. I stared at her, phone clutched in my hand. "I recognize his name now," I whispered. "Isn't it Mark?" For a fleeting moment, there was no response. Then, with a casual shrug, she confirmed, "Yes, so what?" A casual admission, as if revealing a forgotten chore or a minor inconvenience. So what? At that instant, my fragile composure crumbled. I wasn't consumed by anger or hurt anymore. I was beyond those emotions. It had transformed into something else, a sense of numbness, cold and clear. "For how long?" I inquired, my voice echoing hollowly. Jessica gave a dismissive eye roll, finding my question petty. "I'm not sure. A few months, perhaps." Casually leaning against the doorframe, she showed no signs of distress. "Does it truly matter?" My mind struggled to grasp her words. Does it truly matter? How could she remain so calm, as if it were an insignificant issue? I rose slowly. "You've been seeing him for months, deceiving me, acting secretively, and yet here you stand, questioning the significance." Annoyed, she crossed her arms. "I didn't deceive you. I merely withheld certain information." Her voice carried an undercurrent, as if it was me who was being unreasonable for feeling betrayed. "You've been overly controlling recently, always doubting me. So yes, I needed some space, and Mark, he understands that. He doesn't smother me like you do." My thoughts whirled, controlling, suffocating. Did that's how she rationalized it in her mind? Space, yet it echoed more like a sarcastic chuckle. Bitter and empty, devoid of authenticity. "You needed space, so you found solace in another man. You were unfaithful because I cared about your whereabouts." Jessica cocked her head, seeming detached from the entire discourse. "Oh, don't be melodramatic. We hadn't even slept together until last week, if that's what you're truly agitated about." The nonchalance with which she spoke, as if it were insignificant, made my stomach churn. "Last week," I echoed her words, barely registering them. My entire being felt frigid. I didn't know what to retort anymore. Yes, it just transpired. But if you'd stop exaggerating, you'd perceive that it's not a major issue. We've been growing apart for some time now, and you are aware of it." She said it as if it were an obvious truth, expecting me to accept it and move on. I could scarcely meet her gaze. She wasn't the woman I believed her to be, not any longer. Perhaps she never was. I turned away, focusing on the window instead. The room seemed cramped and oppressive. I couldn't endure her presence. "Leave," I muttered softly, my voice scarcely audible. Jessica appeared startled, taken aback for the first time. "What?" I asked. "Leave," I repeated, this time more forcefully, swiveling to confront her. "I don't care where you go. Just depart, immediately." For a brief instant, she seemed on the verge of protest. But then, wordlessly, she retrieved her handbag from the counter. She put on her shoes as if it were an ordinary day. "Very well," she said, gliding past me towards the door. "I'll leave, but don't anticipate my return. You brought this upon yourself." And with that, she departed, slamming the door behind her. The house was silent once more, but there was a new quality to the quiet. It felt definitive, as if something had shattered irreparably. The sound of the door closing reverberated throughout the house, leaving a humming in my ears. I remained stationary, continuing to gaze at the vacant area where Jessica once stood. The void strangely seemed denser than her presence. It was peculiar. After months of sensing her fading, the house now seemed claustrophobic without her. I can't recall how long I stood there, motionless. My mind was empty save for a single repetitive thought: she's left. She truly is gone. Yet, even in that instant, I was unsure if I felt devastated or relieved. Possibly both. I crumpled onto the sofa, still gripping my phone, my hands shaking. The alerts for calls from Jessica and Mark remained on the screen, seemingly taunting me, challenging everything I thought I understood about my life. How had things deteriorated to this point? How could I have let it get so dire without noticing? I placed the phone onto the table and reclined, gazing at the ceiling. My chest felt constricted, but no tears flowed. Instead, I felt empty, desensitized. My mind seemed reluctant to comprehend the recent events. I yearned to feel enraged, to shout, shatter something, punch a wall, any action to alleviate the mounting tension within. Yet, I did none of these. Instead, I remained stationary, as if trapped in a horrific dream from which I couldn't awaken. My thoughts started spinning once more, replaying every detail, each moment that preceded this point. I reminisced about the night we first met, how her self-assured entrance had captivated me instantly. She was distinct then, witty, impulsive, authentic, or so I thought. Now, it seemed as if I'd been cohabiting with a stranger, and only now was I coming to terms with this revelation. And then there was Mark, an unknown figure in my life who somehow became significant in hers. The most painful aspect wasn't her infidelity, it was the fact that she didn't seem to care. She didn't even attempt to deceive me when I inquired about him. She dismissed me callously, as if I were insignificant. I should have anticipated this. Perhaps I did, on some subconscious level, but I chose to believe that such a scenario wouldn't apply to us. That our bond was stronger than this. That I was stronger than this. Yet, I was mistaken. For months, Jessica had been drifting away, and I failed to recognize it or choose to ignore it. The recent interactions we shared echoed in my mind, playing like a twisted montage of crucial moments. Each instance where I'd inquired about her well-being, and she deflected the question. I recalled the nights when she returned home late, the instances when she distanced herself in bed, feigning exhaustion. The nights where I sensed her slipping away gradually, yet did nothing to remedy it, fearing being perceived as paranoid. Now, it was too late. She had vanished, leaving me alone in this desolate house, burdened by the heaviness of her absence. The truth of the matter began to sink in. She wasn't just absent for a day, she was gone, and I was left with nothing but the emptiness she left behind. She wouldn't return. This wasn't a spat that could be resolved with some apologies and pledges for improvement. It was the end, the conclusion of our relationship. Despite wanting to hold on to hope, I understood there was no going back from this. Not after her words, not after her actions. A frosty sense of understanding swept over me. The gravity of the situation finally struck me. Jessica wasn't just a woman uncertain about navigating difficult times. She had chosen. She valued Mark more than our accumulated past. And her gaze, devoid of warmth, confirmed this wasn't something she regretted. She had moved on from me, and I was the last to find out. I couldn't fathom how long I sat there before I rose and began moving. I needed to take action to distract myself from my thoughts. My hands began working automatically, my mind following only after a delay. I took a garbage bag from the kitchen and commenced searching the house for any remnants of her. I collected whatever items I found that reminded me of her garments, cosmetics, a scarf she'd bought but never used, and the perfume that had once been pleasant but now made me queasy. Each item I placed in the bag represented a minor triumph, as if I was systematically removing her from my life, bit by bit. The photographs were the most challenging. There was one from our first holiday together, both of us grinning on the beach with dreams for the future. I gazed at it for some time before tearing it in two. She wasn't that person anymore, nor was I. I discarded the fragments and continued my search. Once done, the house felt strangely vacant. The atmosphere was heavy, the walls silent. Yet, at least she wasn't there any longer. At least I wouldn't have to see her face, hear her voice, or maintain the illusion that we could mend our relationship. As I settled down, drained, a fresh question surfaced. What was next for me? I hadn't contemplated future consequences. It felt as if the ground had vanished beneath me, leaving me in mid-air, uncertain about my landing spot. However, one fact remained unwavering. This wouldn't end with me staying here, expecting her return. She made her decision, and I refused to be her alternative option anymore. The idea of her simply walking out of my life, leaving me in pieces, wasn't going to elicit her satisfaction. I was uncertain about the future, about the steps to rebuild after everything had been destroyed. But one thing was certain. This marked the end for Jessica and me. And for the first time, it struck me that perhaps, just perhaps, This wasn't the worst scenario imaginable. The house still held a disquieting silence. Everything seemed more vivid without Jessica. It was as if her departure left everything bereft of the comfort it once provided. I ought to have felt liberated by her absence, but instead, I found myself ensnared in an unusual predicament, oscillating between denial and the oppressive burden of reality. The house now seemed like a foreign dwelling. My familiar walls, echoing with laughter, disputes, secrets, now resonated as alien. I leaned back on the couch, the trash bag full of her belongings at my feet, and let out a deep sigh. All that remained was to confront the truth. It's astonishing how one can cohabit with someone for years, share a bed, meals, memories, and then, in an instant, it feels like you never knew them at all. Gone were our promises, future plans. All it took was a single name, trace, and everything disintegrated. I needed to confide in someone, so I reached out to my best friend, Eric. He answered on the second ring, still groggy but worried. "Hi there, how are you? You seem troubled. I rarely contact you this early unless it's urgent. There's something I need to tell you, Eric." She's left. Apparently, she's been seeing someone named Mark for months and just walked out on me today as if it was nothing significant. I could sense the fury rising in my voice. The silence that followed was deafening. You sighed audibly. "I don't know what to say, man. I'm really sorry." "Sorry doesn't help now," I said, my voice trembling with pent-up emotions. She doesn't seem to care at all. She didn't even bother trying to explain. It feels like I no longer matter to her, like I never did. "I can't believe this. She seemed so invested in you." Despite the tension, I never imagined she would act this way. Yet, here we are. Her actions speak for themselves, and now she's vanished. A wry chuckle escaped me. Eric fell silent for a while before asking his question like a blow. "What's your next move?" The query left me reeling. With no clear plan in sight, I was merely struggling to move past the mess she created. I don't know. Perhaps divorce is the answer. I can't see any other option, given that I can't simply forgive her. "Are you certain about that?" Eric expressed hesitation in his tone. "I'm not telling you what to do, but maybe there's more to this situation. Have you two talked it out?" I gritted my teeth, trying to hide my anger. "There's nothing left to discuss, Eric. She deceived me for months. She cheated. What else is there to say after that? Occasionally people commit regrettable mistakes, yet that doesn't signify an end if one chooses otherwise. However, the notion of forgiveness at this moment infuriates me. I'm not planning to be a fool, waiting while she contemplates between me and another man. She's made her pick." Eric sighed on the call, possibly comprehending this wasn't the opportune moment for advice. "All right, I understand. But whatever you decide, please, refrain from hasty decisions at present. Allow things to calm down a bit." I remained silent, not knowing how to respond. I merely felt disoriented, as if everything I believed about my life had been uprooted within hours. After some more uneasy conversations, I ended the call and flung my phone onto the sofa. It was then I spotted something. Jessica's laptop on the kitchen counter, half open and dark. My heart raced. I didn't wish to pry, but curiosity got the better of me. Distraught, I detested myself for scrutinizing the phone bill, yet a sense urged me there was more concealed. Approaching, my hands trembling, I unfolded the screen and brought her laptop to life. No password required, as Jessica had always been indifferent towards security. Somehow, this lack of precaution stung like a final slap. It seemed she held such contemptuous confidence that I would never delve deeper. Perhaps she assumed I'd be too timid to investigate. Upon opening her browser and accessing her emails, my feelings of shame were overshadowed by an urgent necessity for uncovering the truth. As I scrolled through her inbox, it didn't take long to find a familiar name mark. A string of emails exchanged between them, dating back weeks, filled with playful banter and inside jokes that eluded my comprehension, suggesting they shared a clandestine world. However, one email jolted me, causing my stomach to plummet. Subject: "Last weekend was incredible." My heart raced as I opened it, dreading the contents. There, clearly written, were arrangements for a rendezvous at a hotel, descriptions of their joyful pastimes, even a photograph showing them, beaming. Content. She appeared radiant, something I hadn't noticed in months. It wasn't a fleeting romance. They had been making plans. Future weekends. Journeys. My mind reeled, and I clung to the counter edge for support. It wasn't an intoxicated mistake, a singular event. She had been constructing a life with this man while still residing in our home, still pretending to be my spouse. I forcefully closed the laptop, unable to bear its sight any longer. The deception was deeper than I'd imagined. It wasn't merely a physical affair. It was emotional. She had abandoned our marriage long before I even sensed it. And more troubling, she didn't care. She left me in the dark, living a dual existence without a hint of remorse. The fury resurged again. Yet this time, it was mingled with a profound, relentless sorrow. She had chosen him over me. Regardless of all we had constructed, now only fragments remained. Before me lay a shut laptop as my thoughts careened in countless directions, none leading toward anything promising. A heavy burden of the impending decision weighed upon me, yet no solution appeared acceptable. For the first time, I grasped the significance of the irrevocable point. I had surpassed it. I remained motionless, scrutinizing that dormant laptop as if it harbored a ticking bomb. The image of Jessica and Mark played persistently in my mind, growing more painful with each tick of the seconds. It wasn't merely an affair she was engaged in, she was contented. She gazed at him as she once did at me, her eyes alight with that smile. I felt as though I was witnessing a version of her that had vanished from my existence, only to discover she had preserved it for someone else. The shock morphed into an icy bitterness. My limbs acted mechanically as I snatched my coat off the chair and departed through the doorway. The dwelling was no longer a suitable environment for me. Her presence, pervasive in every corner, was unbearable. A yearning for fresh air, solitude, and clarity surged within me, warding off the tide of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. I strolled along the sidewalk, oblivious to my direction. It mattered not. I merely required motion. The crisp wind struck my face, yet it failed to dispel the turmoil in my mind. Each stride felt like a departure from my former life and an immersion into the unfamiliar. However, one truth emerged undeniably: there was no turning back now. I fished out my phone, examining it as if it were an alien artifact. A portion of me yearned to contact her, seek explanations, vent my anger at her for her actions. Yet, what purpose could it serve? She had already conveyed everything essential without uttering a word. Her decision was finalized, and I no longer held a place in it. Instead of browsing aimlessly, I accessed my contacts and scrolled down to a number seldom used in years: my lawyer's. Citing it sent a shiver through me. Divorce. The word seemed as cold and sterile as ever, but now it was becoming my unavoidable truth. My finger wavered over the call button. Once this call was made, there'd be no more illusions. No more wishful thinking that perhaps this was just a passing phase that we could reconcile somehow. But then memories of her emails, the hotel, and her arrangements with Mark surfaced. It wasn't merely infidelity. She was strategizing a future devoid of me, relegating me to an insignificant part of her past. A surge of fury coursed through me again, this time stronger than before. I pressed the call button before doubts crept in. The line rang twice before my lawyer's voice echoed. "Hello, Greg. It's been a while. What can I do for you?" Hearing David's voice solidified the decision's reality, but I summoned courage to speak. "David, I require your assistance regarding Jessica. You expressed the intention to initiate a divorce." There was a moment of silence. "I regret your decision. Are you absolutely certain about this? Remember, it's a significant step." You responded firmly, with a demeanor more composed than you actually felt. "Yes, I am. She has been unfaithful for quite some time now. This morning, I discovered all the details. There's no way to salvage what's left." David refrained from further inquiry. "Very well. We can discuss the specifics in my office tomorrow. I will require some information from you, and we can then begin the process." "Tomorrow suits me," was my prompt response, concluding the call before I could fully grasp the magnitude of what I had initiated. Standing on the sidewalk, still gripping the phone, I experienced a peculiar mixture of relief and sorrow. I had just set in motion an event that would legally terminate my marriage, and I was unsure if I should feel proud for taking action or nauseous for relinquishing 7 years of my life. The streets were empty, my mind racing with unchecked thoughts. Memories of Jessica unexpectedly surfaced in my mind, resembling spirits from a past that is now gone. I remembered the day we shifted into our house, bickering over whether to paint the living room blue or green, a choice we'd made jointly. I recalled our first Christmas, where we spent countless hours untangling Christmas lights and joked uncontrollably when half of them failed to function. All seemed so distant, yet it wasn't. It was Jessica, our life, just prior, before the deceit, before Mark. I found myself in a small park near our old residence. The bench groaned under my weight as I sat, gazing at the playground opposite me. A little girl was giggling as she swung to and fro, her father pushing her softly, his smile reflecting the happiest man around. For a fleeting instant, I wondered about that man's actual life. Was he living in paradise or, like me, teetering on the brink of an impending unknown? The contemplation constricted my chest. Once, I was like him, oblivious and confident in my understanding of the world. Jessica and I were content. We harbored aspirations, yet they were crushed long before today. I failed to comprehend how hopeless our situation had become until it was too late. As I sat there, I felt a crushing revelation. The woman I cherished no longer resembled the one who had just exited my life. Jessica had transformed into someone unfamiliar. Perhaps she had been changing gradually, and I was simply too blind to notice. Perhaps I hadn't evolved enough. Regardless, the truth was that we were two different individuals now, moving in polar opposite directions. The hours drifted by unnoticed. The sun dipped towards the horizon, casting lengthy shadows over the park. Despite this, I lacked the strength to return home. Home, a term that no longer resonated with me. The structure might have boasted 4 walls, a ceiling, and all my possessions, but it wasn't a home. Not when devoid of the life I envisioned for myself. Eventually, I rose up and embarked on a leisurely journey back. Upon nearing the house, an object caught my gaze. The garbage bag filled with Jessica's belongings remained by the front door, unattended since I'd left it there. I retrieved it, the heft of it offering an unusual sense of fulfillment. This wasn't mere waste, it was the remainder of her, the fragments of a life she decided to abandon. Without hesitation, I placed the bag into the large outdoor trash bin. The lid closed with a definitive clang, the finality reverberating in the peaceful evening atmosphere. And just like that, the initial step towards progression was made. I had no idea what the ensuing days, weeks, or months would entail. I wasn't delusional enough to imagine that disposing of her belongings would clean up the chaos she left behind. Yet, for the first time, I felt a sense of control over something, regardless of its magnitude. The future was now blank, and while it filled me with fear, it also felt liberating. One aspect remained clear: change was inevitable. I refused to continue as a backup option in Jessica's narrative. This was my life as well, and I wouldn't let her betrayal dictate its course. The following morning seemed strange, as if I were inhabiting someone else's existence. I had slept in our bed, yet it felt more vacant than ever before. The quiet was oppressive. No more sounds of Jessica moving about the house, no kitchen dish clatter. Only silence, my ears filled with echoes of the past events. There was no going back now. I'd made the call. Divorce was no longer a theoretical concept, something to be feared or ignored. It was imminent. I climbed out of bed, feeling weighed down, as if gravity exerted a greater force than usual. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. For an instant, I thought it could be Jessica, but upon checking, it was just Eric. A straightforward message. "Are you all right?" I contemplated my response, unsure if I even recognized the meaning of that word anymore. I swiftly replied with a vague, "I'll manage," before flinging the phone onto the bed. Forcing myself, I went through the motions of the day: coffee, shower, dressing. Every action felt robotic, like I was merely completing tasks to distract my mind. However, each task and each room triggered memories of her. The off-key singing during breakfast, or the shoes always left by the door, never put away despite her promises. I wasn't prepared for the outside world, but I had to meet David, my lawyer, to initiate the process officially. I grabbed my coat and departed, evading the bin where I discarded pieces of yesterday connected to her. The journey to David's office seemed prolonged, my thoughts burdened with the gravity of this meeting's implications. I parked the car and sat for a moment, contemplating the office building. Once more, the reality struck me I was on the verge of dismantling our shared life, piece by piece. David welcomed me with a polite, sympathetic demeanor, common among those who have witnessed numerous divorces. He bypassed inquiring about my emotions, which I was thankful for. In his modest office, we settled, the scattered papers and harsh fluorescent lighting illuminating the grim state of affairs ahead. "Let's commence with the fundamentals," David said, maintaining a calm yet professional tone. "You've been married 7 years, correct? No children?" I nodded, feeling my throat constrict. 7 years. It seemed like an eternity and a moment simultaneously. Any joint assets? A house, cars, savings? He was ready to document our responses. I forced myself to concentrate on the legal aspects instead of the emotional burden. "Yes, we share ownership of the house due to the mortgage. No children, so no related concerns. We have a joint account, but most of our savings are kept separately. It appears rather straightforward." David nodded, scribbling his notes. "Excellent. That simplifies matters. Under the current situation, we can expedite the process. Would you prefer an uncontested divorce? If Jessica agrees, we can bypass a court battle. The thought of an uncontested divorce, so devoid of emotion amidst betrayal, left me queasy. Yet, what other choice was there? I couldn't contest for something she didn't desire. "Yes, uncontested. I just want this over." David looked at me sympathetically. "I understand. It's the fastest route to closure." Closure. The words lingered, lifeless and elusive. How was I expected to find closure when every aspect of my life still bore her imprints? As we concluded the meeting, I signed the initial documents and shook hands with David. "I will file this today," he said. "You'll likely hear from her attorney soon, but don't fret. It's routine." I affirmed with a nod and departed from the office, feeling exhausted beyond my initial arrival. The legalities were underway, or at least initiated, yet the emotional aftermath was just commencing. In the car, I stayed for a while, gazing at the steering wheel, trying to comprehend the recent turn of events. I had embarked on the path of dissolving my marriage, but instead of experiencing relief, I felt as if I'd torn out a part of me and given it up for storage in some impersonal legal document. I aimlessly drove for a spell, allowing the roads to guide me. Eventually, I found myself at an unexpected destination, Stacy's residence. Yes, that's Stacy, the one who Jessica had claimed was her companion on those nights when she was actually with Mark. Some inner compulsion, a warped yearning for answers, propelled me to her door. I knocked twice, my heart thundering in my chest. Stacy opened the door, her eyes enlarging in shock upon seeing me. "Hey, Greg, unexpectedly seeing you here. Skipping the small talk, I need to ask. How long have you known about Jess being with Mark?" A momentary guilt flashed across your face before you tried to hide it behind a smile. "Greg, I'm not sure what you mean," I interrupted sternly. "Don't lie to me. You've been shielding her, haven't you? Every time she said she was with you, she was with him." "For how long, Stacy?" You looked away, biting your lip, the truth now too heavy to conceal. "A few months, possibly longer. I can't say for certain." The revelation struck hard, despite my suspicions. "And you never thought it necessary to inform me? You stood by as she deceived me, time and again." Uncomfortable, you murmured, "To be honest, Greg, it wasn't my business. Jess is my friend." "You didn't wish to intervene in your conflict, I presume?" I expressed my surprise. "Yet, you were already involved, as you assisted her in deceit." "I apologize," she retorted sharply, her eyes reflecting defensiveness. "I didn't know what else to do. Jessica was miserable, and I felt it wasn't my place to complicate things for her or you. Worsen things. as if matters hadn't already been complicated by Jessica's duplicity. I shook my head, feeling disgusted. "Thank you for nothing, Stacy," I said, leaving before she could utter another word, leaving her speechless. My heart was racing, my hands tightly clenched at my sides. The truth, now in the open, didn't provide the clarity I sought. Instead, it left me feeling empty. The betrayal wasn't just from Jessica. It was from everyone who stood by, silent witnesses to her destruction of what we had. Those who permitted my existence in the shadows. On departing Stacy's residence, I found myself acknowledging a revelation. My pursuit for answers was at an end. They were all within grasp now, yet none offered any solace. The only remaining task was to gather the fragments and determine how to reconstruct my life devoid of her. For the first instance since this calamity commenced, I recognized exactly where to commence. Upon returning home, the sun was setting, drawing long shadows on the front lawn. Everything felt altered now. Perhaps lighter, or perhaps it was simply that the anesthesia had fully taken hold, dulling the harsh contours of the torment. I entered within and shut the door, surrendering myself to the quiet. It was a novel kind of tranquility now. Not the oppressive silence, but the quietude that ensues when a choice has been definitively made. The burden of Jessica's deception, Stacy's collusion, and the divorce still loomed heavy. Now, her absence felt like a weight I was slowly comprehending. Yet, walking into the living room, I gazed at the spot where Jessica had been that morning, her cold indifference etched in my memory. It seemed her spectral presence lingered there, yet it didn't hurt as intensely as before. I was tired of pursuing phantoms, exhausted from trying to decipher senseless realities. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, an anticipated interruption of empty messages or half-hearted condolences. But when I read the text, "Jessica, can we talk?" a jumble of feelings flooded me. A part of me yearned to cast the device away, to dismiss her as she had me for months. Yet another part, clinging to the notion that some matters warranted resolution, couldn't let it go. I needed to hear what she had to say, if only to draw a line under this entire ordeal. I didn't reply to her message. Instead, I collected my keys and drove off. I knew where she was likely to be, possibly at Mark's or hiding somewhere else. But if she wanted to talk, she could meet me at the spot where everything began to fall apart. The journey was brief, and soon I found myself parked outside the coffee shop where my first genuine date with Jessica took place. It seemed tragically ironic that this would be the location for our ending, yet it somehow felt appropriate too, a cycle completing. Minutes passed before her car arrived. She stepped out hesitantly, glancing around anxiously until she spotted me through the window. She entered, her face pale, unsure of what awaited her. I was just as uncertain. Jessica took her seat opposite me, her eyes scanning mine for something. Perhaps forgiveness, perhaps comprehension. Yet she didn't deserve either. "Greg," she began, her voice softer than it had been in months. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up. I simply waited for you to clarify. You weren't enough, it wouldn't have been sufficient anyway." She sighed, raking her fingers through her hair. "I acknowledge my mistake. I understand the pain I caused you. I didn't intend for things to escalate this way." Her words echoed, as if she had rehearsed them beforehand. They lacked substance, fell flat. "You didn't mean for it to get this far," I repeated, maintaining a calm but chilly tone. "Jessica, you didn't just make a mistake. You deceived me. You were unfaithful for months. You no longer bothered to conceal it." Her gaze dropped to the table, remorse flickering across her face. "It wasn't supposed to be like this, Mark. It started casually. I didn't know what I was doing. I felt confined, Greg. I felt estranged from us, from you. This is the excuse I expected, the justification intended to clarify everything. But it failed. Nothing she said could reverse her actions. I felt estranged. Did you elope with someone else?" I inquired, maintaining a steady, nearly anesthetized tone. "Yet, you never considered discussing your feelings with me before you acted behind my back." Jessica looked up at me, her eyes appealing. "I didn't know how. We both have been distant, Greg. It felt like we were living separate lives even prior to Mark. I didn't know how to mend it. I believed that if I pursued something for myself, I might find a solution. Her words struck me, but not as she may have intended. They weren't painful because they were false. They hurt because they sealed the fate of the person I once adored. She wasn't expressing remorse. She was apologizing because she had been found out. I leaned closer, my gaze fixed on hers. You didn't do this due to our distance. You did this because you desired to. You craved something other, something different. Instead of attempting to salvage our relationship, you opted to abandon everything. Your denial echoed, yet it held no power. The truth was laid bare between us. I came here hoping we might discuss, you whispered, your voice trembling. Perhaps find a solution. A resolution, I questioned, stunned. A resolution? It seems there is none to be found, I replied. You shattered our marriage. There's no healing. The divorce proceedings have already begun. Your complexion paled, and I saw genuine fear in your eyes for the first time. Divorce, yes, I affirmed, my voice unwavering. Divorce. It's concluded, Jessica. You made your decision. Now I am enacting mine. You gazed at me, your lips parting as if to protest, to say words that might change my mind. But the well of persuasive arguments had run dry. You had sown the seeds of your isolation. Now you must reap its solitude. The air between us grew denser, the weight of finality descending. Her eyes glistened, yet no tears spilled. It wasn't sorrow for our separation that caused her tears. Rather, it was surprise, as I had been the one to depart initially. Following what seemed an endless moment, she rose. I didn't wish for it to end this way, she murmured softly. I echoed her sentiment by standing up too. Nor did I, but here we are. Remaining silent, she exited the coffee shop and vanished into the night. I observed her departure, a peculiar sensation of resolution sweeping over me. This was the conclusion, our parting. For the first time in months, I felt unburdened. The burden of her deception, falsehoods, and animosity still lingered, yet it no longer suffocated me. I reclaimed control of my life, and despite the tough path ahead, at least it was one I would tread. As I exited the coffee shop and stepped into the crisp night air, a revelation struck me. I wasn't just forfeiting Jessica. I was finding myself once more. Above all, that was what truly mattered. For it became apparent that the individual I had to pardon wasn't her, but rather myself, for permitting her to drain me for such a prolonged period. Now, I found myself liberated.